Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and a very warm welcome to Wednesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. And what a huge day Tuesday was for every single DC fan who has been hoping and dreaming all their lives for a great connective live action animated universe and in gaming all being connected. James Gunn and Peter Safran laid out their brilliant, exciting, brilliantly presented plans, and it was a very exciting day, and it was my pleasure to stay live with you as soon as that announcement was made. Now, in the first part of today's DC Universe Daily, I want to explain the Flash movie situation because Grace Randolph has released some information which may or may not be true. I suspect this time she's speaking the truth, and her sources are quite accurate about this. So I want to talk to you about what the Flash was, Underwater Armada, and what it's going to be. Now, the Flash movie, in general terms, won't be changed. The first kind of three parts of the movie stay the same. But they are cutting things from the end of the movie. So basically, Barry Allen wants to save his mother, goes back in time, saves her, changes the timeline, and it becomes Flashpoint, where he meets Sasha Calle's Supergirl, Kara Zor-El, and Michael Keaton's Batman. That stays in. Michael Shannon Zod, all of that, all stays in. Now, when he fixes Flashpoint and he goes back to his timeline, he'll start to notice, or originally he was going to start to notice, that there were some differences. Michael Keaton's Batman was now Batman in this timeline. In the original DCEU timeline, Sasha Calle's Supergirl is a fixed point in time there now, where she wasn't before. Now, these elements have now been cut by James Gunn and Peter Safran. So when he returns to this new timeline, it's looking like, at the very least, that we will be in James Gunn's and Peter Safran's new DC Universe timeline. So there'll be no Sasha Calle's Supergirl. Sasha Calle will not be playing Supergirl in Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which is James Gunn's and Peter Safran's DC Universe Supergirl movie, one of many titles announced yesterday. That's one of the ones that stands out for me. So Sasha Calle is cut from the ending. Michael Keaton will not be Batman in this new timeline. He's gone from that moment when Barry returns to what he thinks is the main timeline, but it's a new one. So they're not there anymore. The final crisis tease at the end of the movie, when Ben Affleck's kind of repeating what Barry Allen did to him in BVS, where he's begging Barry to come and find us. Basically, that's what he was saying. It was a final crisis tease. And what it was, basically, Batfleck is stuck in another universe. Well, that's been cut as well. So Ben Affleck will be in the Flash movie at the very beginning of the film before Barry goes back to the past to save his mother. That is there. It will remain. The integrity of all of that, the stuff that Ben Affleck said it was the best kind of Batman stuff he ever shot, that stays in the movie. But the ending with the final crisis tease isn't happening anymore. It's been cut. Keaton being in the main timeline, been cut. Sasha Calle's Supergirl, Kara Zor-El, cut from the new timeline. So there's something else that Grace Randolph has mentioned. Now, she's been told, apparently, that Barry will visit a historical DC figure. Now, she didn't elaborate too much on this, whether this is a historical movie character or a historical character within the DC universe. But considering that James Gunn and Peter Safran have called Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters, which I love, so basically it's a chapter of Gods and Monsters. So maybe either a god or a monster Barry will meet in this kind of situation, however he does it. So Now, Grace Randolph didn't really say this, but I'm going to make the assumption. Now, originally, as I explained, Walter Hamada wanted a new timeline when Barry returns to the main timeline. So it'd be a little bit different. New timeline now. Walter Hamada's new timeline won't exist at the end of this movie, and I believe they've reshot some things at the end of the movie to set up the new DC Universe timeline. Now, this means when we go into the next movie after the Flash movie, which will be Blue Beetle, that will be part of DC Universe. So I don't know if they've had to rejig that film, reshoot that film in places to make sure it's shot within the new timeline, or if James Gunn came at a time while they were shooting where they could make those relevant changes. And maybe James Gunn and Peter Safran knew before we did. They obviously knew before we did that they were going to be running DC Studios and this new DC Universe. That's the only assumption I can make. So instead of using the Flash movie to set up Walter Hamada's timeline, it's James Gunn's and Peter Safran's timeline. James Gunn spoke briefly about the Flash movie, calling it one of the best superhero movies he's ever seen. Of course, they're very desperate for this movie to be as successful as possible. And they've even spoken about Ezra Miller continuing to play the Flash, but they didn't kind of commit to that. They were non-committal. They said at the moment he's focusing on getting well. We will talk once he's ready. So that's maybe he'll stay, maybe he won't. But again, all these year's movies, they'll look at the box office and make their decisions then. But it looks like, from what they're saying, all four leads of this year's movies are pretty much able to join the new DC Universe. And there's only a way of doing that by creating another timeline. So basically, as I told you months ago, DC Universe is a rebranded version of the DCEU. But there has to be an explanation how we have a new younger actor playing Superman. Will we see the new Superman actor in the Flash movie? I have no idea. They may not tease that. But I think because James Gunn spoke about this and said they're setting up a new timeline and they're cutting Keaton from the new timeline and Sasha Calle as Kara Zor-El out of the ending of the movie and the new timeline, either they're going to set something up to introduce DC Universe, or they've just cut those elements off so they're not set up in the new timeline, so it doesn't confuse the narrative. So there may not be anything kind of official at the end of that movie to say that this is part of the new DC Universe, but making it open-ended. Because Grace Randolph also said they're not going to use anything from the movie. But I think what she meant was they're not using what they were going to do originally with Keaton being in the new timeline and Sasha Calle being the new Supergirl in that new timeline, because Walter Hamada isn't running things anymore, and that makes absolute sense. So I think that there'll be a kind of a scenario where a new timeline is set up, just not the one that Hamada was setting up. And I thought I'd explain that to you because it can be very confusing. Now, James Gunn did a great presentation. He spoke very slowly, trying to make sure there's no misunderstandings. He announced all this great stuff. And as I said yesterday on my live, I just like all the announcements. Now, something else I need to clarify, because I may have misrepresented the situation on the live because I didn't understand myself. They've announced 10 projects for the new DC Universe. That's not all the projects in Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. There will be more, because we have another situation that we kind of, James Gunn explained himself really well, as Peter Safran did. We understand what they want to do. They want to pay more respect to writers. They think more focus has been put in Hollywood with directors, and actors and writers have been left out. I couldn't agree more. What have you got? What kind of movie or TV show have you got without the writer? The writer is fleshing out. He's giving you a story. He's giving you dialogue, right? He, she, or whoever, right? They're giving you everything. Without the writers, you have nothing. So James Gunn makes a very, very good point, and he's set up a kind of writer's room scenario as well. I like the idea. I like everything they said. And if I didn't like anything, I wouldn't be shilling it. I wouldn't be kissing anyone's butt. You know me by now. I've been doing videos since 2018. I tell you exactly how I think. And sometimes I get myself into trouble being a bit too open and honest about how I see Hollywood and my knowledge of Hollywood. But I'm here to inform you with facts and my opinion, and to listen to yours. Because we've had this announcement now, I will do lives every evening, and I will do an editorial like this every day called the DC Universe Daily. So basically, I am the #1 DC channel. Simple as that. Now, I'm not just a DC channel. I'm here to talk about other entertainment, Doctor Who as well, and other stuff. But predominantly, we are talking DC. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm the #1 DC channel. No, I don't have a lot of viewers. I don't have lots of subscribers. I don't get a lot of likes. I don't have a lot of fans. But I am the #1 DC channel. And I'll explain to you why. Because I'm here every day with a half-an-hour video. And we do root and branch videos. We analyse situations in DC. Now, I've spoken a lot about James Gunn. When he was first announced, I was really excited. Then I started to doubt him when he removed Henry Cavill. But after seeing the slate, just a partial element of this first chapter of his and Peter's DC Universe, I would have to be a madman not to be happy with James Gunn and Peter Safran. So I've issued an apology on Twitter to James for doubting him and maybe being over harsh about him and his plans. Because I'm a person who likes to say, do you know what? I'm right, or like we also like to say. But when I'm wrong, I like to say, do you know what, James Gunn? I was wrong, and I apologise for ever doubting you. He's a very talented man, and seeing that slate just makes me feel proud and excited that him and Peter are involved. They've spoken about the past and how disjointed DC has been. He's been very critical about a lot of things. What I liked about this press conference, they didn't duck any issues. Now, he believes he didn't fire Henry Cavill as Superman. He just didn't hire him. Now, you know, that's tomatoes, isn't it? He didn't want Henry as his Superman. He's been very direct and honest about it. So that's the way it is. So I'm very excited about this slate that's been announced, but that's the situation with the Flash movie in the future, the way I see it. Still sets up a new timeline. They're cutting Keaton off the end, Sasha Calais off the end. They won't be part of the new timeline. So I think, so basically, when the new timeline is set up, it looks like a new timeline has been set, but there won't be too many details of that timeline. It'll be interesting. So you've still got Aquaman there. You've still got, you know, all the characters there. So apparently they're cutting Wonder Woman out of the ending of the Flash movie as well, which, now this is according to Grace Randolph, so she could be wrong. So we haven't had an announcement of a Wonder Woman project. Yes, we're getting the Fantasy Island Themyscira prequel kind of Game of Thronesy type of show, Paradise Lost, which I'm very excited about. It sounds brilliant, it sounds huge, but it is a prequel, so no Wonder Woman. So what's going on with Wonder Woman? Well, obviously, the second part of Chapter 1 could have a Wonder Woman movie within it. Now I was told on my live last night, and I don't know how true this is, that he claims he's had conversations with Gal Gadot and she's interested in being involved. I just smell a rat here. So what I want eventually from James and Peter is clarification. Where's our Wonder Woman movie? Because they did speak at the press conference about having Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman up there. So basically, they can introduce lower characters, you know, while they're leaning on the, you know, the icons of DC, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman. So clearly, he has got plans for Wonder Woman. Now, as I said, he claims that everything in the garden is rosy with Gal, but she's not saying anything. And I think this is very, very strange. So I think the next thing I want explained, and obviously there's a reason he hasn't announced what's going on with Wonder Woman. She clearly isn't in the first chapter of this plan. Now, we were told this by scoopers, and in a way he denied this, but I think he used the Paradise Lost project to say, well, you know, there is a kind of Wonder Woman-y kind of project, but clearly she's not there unless they find a way to use her on there, but I doubt it. So we're a Wonder Woman movie short right now. So I do want clarification on this. I'm still not convinced about Gal Gadot's future as the character, even though he claims, you know, oh yeah, she's, you know, it's all fine. There's something amiss about Gal Gadot, gone very, very quiet. Where is her project? Because Zaslav said it when he first took over Warner Brothers Discovery. He said it, that Wonder Woman, Batman and Superman will be front and centre in the DC universe. So clearly, there's something that has to happen with Wonder Woman. So that's something we need clarifying. So I don't know how much of her we will see in the Flash movie. I don't know what Gal's future is, but I think very, very soon they will clarify that situation, and they clearly are not ready or comfortable to clarify it now or in the press conference. Because as well as doing a press conference, he did a presentational video, as I've already spoken about. Speak slowly. The communication skills of James Gunn in that video were beautiful. I was very, very, very impressed. So some of you are going to want to know what I think of these projects. I spoke to you on my live about this, but I want to go through these projects like project by project. Now, there's a couple of them that I just don't understand, never heard of, so there's not much I can tell you in terms of opinion. I'm ready and open to see what they are. I like the idea of one of the projects, which James Gunn's already written 7 episodes for, an animated show which will translate into live action using the same actors. He's talking about using the same actors in live action for the same characters, gaming and animation and live action. So that's brilliant, because he was speaking a lot about connectivity, and I think at this stage it's very important. He spoke about it being not Marvel 2.0. I like the idea of every movie and every character and every kind of project having its own unique identity. And so what Kevin Feige does with the MCU, every world in the MCU, same lighting, same colour palettes, it doesn't really change. What he's saying is we want everything to have its own separate identity. Now, some people won't like that, but I think this is very logical. Imagine on the planet Earth we live on. Every time you go to a different country, they use different brickwork. Some countries are more brighter. You know, you get full moons, sometimes you get orange moons. Every country has this different colour palette, a different style, and different brickwork, you know, and designs. So this is what he's doing here. He's saying, yes, it's one world, but they're all going to look different and they're all going to have their unique identity. And I agree with that. So let's look at these projects. Now, earlier this week I spoke about Waller. I thought it would be called Checkmate, but they're sticking with the name Waller, so it's her show. Now, while he was talking about this, we saw Amanda Waller in a kind of piece of artwork, DC artwork, where she was handcuffed. So clearly this is a continuation in what happened in Peacemaker. Now, I think he is going to use some of the cast members. That's what it sounded like he was saying in the presentation. So he's very excited about that one. I think it'll be interesting. So this is the first kind of DC Universe thing, officially, that they've been working on. But then he gets to the big project. He calls it the big one, the main one. He says this is the real introduction to the DC Universe, and I expect this film to have loads of cameos for the characters that will populate this new DC Universe. It's Superman Legacy. This will release July the 11th, 2025. That's a huge year for them. 2025 is going to be quite a big year, because already they've got the Batman 2 and Superman Legacy is releasing in the same year. So that could be like a couple of billion, 3 billion for them, whatever. So they could make a lot of money if they've done the right thing with this Superman movie. So Superman Legacy. Legacy means legacy. You know, what is Superman's legacy? Well, Superman's legacy is truth, justice, and the American way. Now that's basically Peter Safran's words, not mine. Now, I was surprised he mentioned the "and the American way" thing, because that's not very PC, and there's a lot of kind of divisive conversations whether we should say, truth, justice, and the American way. I mean, that's what they used originally. I mean, I've always seen Superman as someone who protects the entire universe and creation. In comic book history, he's been on other planets. He's gone to planets where he hasn't got his powers. There's no red sun. And he's helped and saved people's and beings and aliens' lives on these planets. But I don't have an issue with that. So, yeah, legacy, I think they want to justify why he's so pure and optimistic and, why he has a no-kill policy. I think this is going to be the film that cements his legacy in DC Universe. And the words of James Gunn saying that Superman will hit theatres, when he said that, like the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, because knowing that Superman is returning to movie theatres makes me so proud and so excited. So there's that one. Then we go to HBO Max for Lanterns. Now, we know that Greg Berlanti and Mark Guggenheim and that kind of team were working on a huge, ambitious Green Lantern HBO Max show. That has been cancelled. Has been cancelled since really Zaslav came in, and definitely when James and Peter came in. Greg Berlanti will not have any involvement in DC projects being developed anymore. Lanterns will be developed by James Gunn's new writing room, new writing team. And this is going to focus around Hal Jordan and John Stewart as kind of intergalactic policemen, and their realm, the area they're policing is Earth. Now, he said, James, that this will have a big connection to the shared DC Universe story. So you'll need to, really keep an eye on that one. So it's going to be cool to see the Lanterns. I think this series is a T-series, and I think this series will lead into a movie. So those not happy and complaining that there's no Green Lantern movie at this point, I think there will be. Don't be surprised if we actually get a Green Lantern movie later on in Chapter 1, which is titled Gods and Monsters. So I think this is just a tease for a Green Lantern movie in the same chapter. That's what I suspect, my friends, but they're not ready to announce that. So that's very exciting. So then you've got an animated show called, I think it's is it an animated show? I think it's a movie, actually. There's a movie called The Authority. It's about a group of people, and he's kind of, I think this is the one he compared to A Few Good Men. So something comes from the sky, and basically, I think people cross the lines to protect humanity from them. I think that this is what this is. So as I say, there's some projects I don't understand. This is brand new, open to it. I'm excited. Now, so Paradise Lost is something I've already mentioned, but this is the Wonder Woman prequel show on HBO Max. And James and Peter have described this as a kind of Game of Thrones type of, intrigue and betrayal. So it's going to be a very interesting, exciting project, and I'm looking forward to that one as well. But I am concerned about the future of Wonder Woman herself. Look, from what James has said about Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman being important, I'm going to take a huge leap here and say there is going to be a Wonder Woman movie in Chapter 1, just like I feel there will be a Green Lantern movie in Chapter 1. So after Paradise Lost, we get the next big event since the Superman movie. That's how I'm seeing it. Brave and the Bold, right? This is the Batman movie. So Damian Wayne will be James Gunn's Robin, and obviously he's, his father is Bruce Wayne Batman. So this is going to be a huge movie. Clearly, Talia al Ghul will have to be in this film, and Ra's al Ghul will be introduced into this film. I love this section of the DC universe, and I think it will be very comic book accurate. This film sounds very exciting to me, and it sounds like the stark opposite of what Matt Reeves is doing in the DC Elseworlds. And that's our next port of call, The Batman 2, which will be also released in 2025. We don't know anything about that movie. We know we're getting an Arkham spin-off on HBO Max, and before that, a Penguin spin-off on HBO Max. So 2025, so that's basically the next big year for DC, because next year you're going to have nothing apart from Joker. We're getting a Booster Gold show. Always loved Booster Gold ever since I saw him introduced into Smallville. And then the next big thing is Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Now, we haven't had a Superman movie since Helen Slater's and the Janet Swark directed Supergirl movie. It was a big flop, but I loved the movie. I loved the charm of the movie. But this film is based on Tom King's graphic novel. So I think Tom King will be working with James Gunn and the team on this one. So I haven't read this graphic novel. I think I'm going to have to read this graphic novel because apparently it's very compelling, very dark, and very dramatic. But it's a big event to have a Supergirl movie after all these years. And to have a Supergirl movie and a Superman movie within the same franchise in the first chapter shows you the ambitions of this first chapter. Again, let me remind you, this is just the first few projects. This is not everything. That's why I believe we're getting a Green Lantern movie in this chapter and a Wonder Woman movie. Whether that's Gal Gadot or not, we're going to have to wait and see. And finally, I think this is the most surprising entry into James Gunn's and Peter Safran's slate. It's a Swamp Thing, not just a movie, but a horror movie. So I'm really excited because I was one of many people who was devastated when the Swamp Thing series was cancelled because I thought it was a really, really good series. And it shows you how serious James Gunn takes DC and his knowledge of DC, because I think Swamp Thing and characters like Supergirl and, you know, this kind of gods and monsters thing, this is what you do when you get DC. So I don't know very much about Swamp Thing within the comics, but I'm excited. But when you're having Swamp Thing, I think Constantine is going to be in this movie. I don't think J.J. Abrams' Justice League Dark Project is going to happen anymore. Maybe he'll get to direct Swamp Thing. I don't know. Because I think there are agreements in place with J.J. Abrams. I think that's why they're saying the Black Superman movie is still in development, active development, officially, but that film's been in active development for 3 or 4 years. So I think it's unlikely we'll see that. But with a Swamp Thing movie, I believe we will see Constantine in this movie, and that's the introduction of the Justice League Dark characters as well. Don't forget, I'll remind you for the billionth time, that Chapter 1 of DC Universe is Gods and Monsters. Now that's something that's got Constantine written all over. So I expect Constantine to have, you know, a big part to play in the Swamp Thing movie. So that's exciting as well. Just to really say, you know, just closing off Wednesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily, I've very seldom been so proud to be a DC fan. During my live video yesterday, I was very proud to be wrong about James Gunn. And, you know, I had my doubts because us DC fans have just been led up the garden path too long. And to know we've got people in charge who do deeply care, who understand the importance for their studio, DC Studios, but more importantly, Warner Brothers Discovery, that this has to work. And their plans look very, very ambitious. There's one thing you can say about this slate. They're not playing it safe. You know, Swamp Thing is very ambitious. A Supergirl movie, very ambitious. To take Batman through the brave and the bold route is very ambitious. A lot of people would have preferred Dick Grayson as Robin. But, again, to make it clear, in his presentation, James Gunn did say this is the beginning of introducing the Bat family. So finally, in live action, we're going to have a fully fleshed out Bat family. This is something that I've been saying on my channel for such a long time that I want to see. And you fans keep on telling me you want to see it. So there should be no complaints there. This is exciting. This is exciting for the DC fans that have been reading comics for years. For the general audience, these are the groups of people who felt the DCEU, from Man of Steel onwards, didn't represent them and what they wanted. Well, James Gunn is representing people that have been reading these comics for such a long time. But also, it's interesting because when you look at it, it's so ambitious it doesn't really seem like it's trying to overtly ignore DC stands and go for the general audience. So it's going to be very, very interesting how they do this and how they marry the old DCEU with DC Universe as well. All I can assume, as I said earlier about the Flash movie, they're using that movie to still change the timeline. And they've made changes to the end of the movie. We'll see. We'll see if it makes sense by the end of it, or they kind of leave it open-ended and they'll deal with that within the Superman movie. Because there needs to be some explanations, that's for sure. And seeing how he conducted himself in the video, James Gunn, speaking slowly, making sure the communication was there, he was making sure that we understand what's going on. And I think I'm pretty sure that I understand, and I know and hope that you lot understand, and this is what today's video was all about, to explain the Flash movie, to tell you what Grace Randolph is saying has been cut and the changes that have been made. But I was told by my sources a long time ago that Michael Keaton had been cut out of the end of the movie. Listen, I never understood, I love Michael Keaton as Batman, but I never understood how he was going to work as the main Batman in DC Universe. I can only assume that Batgirl was going to take on that kind of mantle, next gen, Bat family member. That's the only assumption I can make. But yeah, it seemed a bit odd, that's for sure. So that's the first part of the Chapter 1 DC Universe slate from James Gunn and Peter Safran. But yes, I must stress again, this is just a little bit from that first chapter. So I'll reiterate my position. I think we'll get a Green Lantern movie in this first chapter and a Wonder Woman movie. We'll see what role Gal Gadot will have within that movie, because right now I'm still very suspicious that she's done. And if she really is being cut from the Flash movie, as Henry Cavill has been as well, that doesn't bode well for her future. But the best place to be is YouTube's #1 DC channel. We may not have the viewers, we may not have the likes, we may not have the attention, but one thing we've got is due diligence. You will know everything about the future of DC Universe here as it breaks, and I'm very excited to bring it to you all. This has been Wednesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection, and I'll see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.